and tobacco license
All right. Yeah, okay, try it now.
okay, right now. I move that the select board renew the second class tobacco license for Montshire Services LLC, doing business as Bob's Service Center, 4 Ballardville Drive, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Sue. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Our next one is the renewal of the Northern Stage Company. This is a license of the first class. Discussion on this or a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay, thanks, Sadie.
I move that we approve the renewal of the Northern Stage Company at 76 Gate Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001, first class liquor license.
Okay. Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Kim. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimous. The third is the this is the Quechee and Marshland Farm, a license for the first, third, and an outside consumption license. Any discussion on this one? Lane?
Mr. Chair, I make the motion that we renew Perry Hospitality Group of Vermont, doing business as the Quechee Inn at Marshland Farm, 119 Quechee Main Street, Quechee, Vermont, 05059, first, third, and outside consumption permits.
Okay, great. We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second the motion.
A second from Mary. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right. The next one is Thyme Restaurant. This is a license of the first class, third class, and outside consumption.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I move that the select board approve the renewal of Thyme Restaurant, 85 North Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05001 for first, third, and outside consumption.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Brandon. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And then finally, the Public House, license of the first and third class and outside consumption. Discussion, Lane?
No discussion. Make a motion that we approve the renewal of Public House at Quechee Gorge, doing business as Public House Pub, 5813 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont, 05059, for first, third class, and outside consumption permit.
Great, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second. Sue? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Great. Well, that will finish our work as the local liquor control board. Will reopen as the Hartford Selectboard. We have no cannabis control board business. Order of agenda. I don't think we have any changes to that. So we'll go to public comment. We'll start with people in the room, and then we'll go to those who are joining us on Zoom. You'll have 5 minutes. Please address the select board as a whole with no personal attacks. If you have a comment about another item on our agenda, please wait till that time to comment. But anyone who's willing, come up to the microphone and identify themselves. The town, village of residence. I don't see anyone here in the room. Anyone online?
Currently, no hands up online.
All right. Well, we will end public comment and go to select board comments. Kim, do you have anything? Oh, sorry, Sue.
So I'm grappling with trying to figure out what we're doing here. And I'd like to put this on the record, and I'll talk to anybody about it later. There's 2 quotes I came into this job with, which one is from Dick Grassi, who I have loved for many years and respected. And he said, when you walk through that door, you leave your personal opinion at the door. The other one is a sign that a friend of mine saw in Maine, which says, the people do not want to hear our opinions from our mouths. They want to hear their opinions from our mouths. And this had to do with a dispute in a town in Maine with their select board. So these words reflect my understanding of what, at its most basic level, I think the job at this table requires. And trust me, this is a new understanding of what at its, at least on the level that I hoped I comprehend it now. Since I joined not quite a month ago, we've had 2 trainings, and the most basic and consistent points we heard are reflected in those 2 quotes. Still and yet, we have at least one member of this board who appears to be constitutionally incapable of following those simple rules. And probably, if I didn't hear from almost everyone I know in this town that this person clearly does not apprehend these simple rules, I would not be quite so upset about it. I know a few people in this town, it's taking a lot of my time. The rules are not rocket science, or at least I think they're not rocket science. So I want someone to clarify for me whether I am on the right track. 1, we on this board represent the people of Hartford. We do not sua sponte decide what they want us to do. We're supposed to listen and reflect on what we hear from them, after which we decide the issues before us. And we do not negotiate our vote on some bizarre quid pro quo basis. I'd like to know if I'm on the right track here. And if I'm not, I would love to be told what I'm missing. Thank you.
Okay, we'll consider that your select board comments.
Thank you.
Kim, back to you.
I just wanted to acknowledge a couple things. One, this is the first time in a long time, I think, that all 7 members are here in 3 dimensions in the room. And so I'm really happy that we're all here. And 2, I think this might be possibly the first sitting board ever. I didn't do the research, so I could be wrong. That is majority female identifying members. And I'm really very happy for our male identifying colleagues as well. But I feel like this is a real stride of progress in our municipality. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask John that we revisit the idea of bringing maybe a refresher for our cannabis control policies and things that since that last webinar, maybe Lisa and you and I can talk about it or something, but I think that would be useful for the full board. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Brandon, any comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mary, you?
No.
Hi, Diana.
Nope.
Lenny?
Yes, I do. So the last snowstorm we had was a significant snowstorm. And I received a lot of complaints from people in the public that our roads were not being taken care of in the fashion that they should have. To this, I have a response. And the board's not going to like this. When we vote for items that are not geared towards the maintenance of our infrastructure of our town, and instead devote funds for other activities, we have to accept the consequences of those actions. Our Public Works Department is very shorthanded. I personally think for the shorthandedness that they had, they did an excellent job of maintaining the roads with that shorthandedness. We're talking about 8-hour plow schedules because of the lack of drivers that we have in the town of Hartford. When people complain about the roads being not plowed and ice covered, they need to realize that your vote matters, and what you want taken care of in this town needs to be reflected in the candidates that you vote for. When we have things that do not focus on infrastructure, we do not get infrastructure taken care of in a manner that you would like. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Lanny, my understanding is fund.
I don't think that requires a response.
I'm speaking on my own behalf.
So this is your
because
comment.
this is my select board comment. Thank you.
Personal comment, correct?
Yeah, my understanding is things like the DPW budget, like we fully fund that. So, I don't even know what else to say about that. Other thing is on Saturday, there is the school information meeting at 10 o'clock at the gym to talk about the budget. I'll be there to go over the proposed charter changes as well. So just FYI for the public. All right. So appointments. We're going to consider the reappointment of Patrick Autilio to the Hartford Committee on Equity and Inclusion, H4E, for a 2-year term beginning April 2nd, 2024, and ending April 1st, 2026. Any discussion on this one?
I would just say that Pat has been serving as the chair to the H4E committee and is like super organized and very, he's a real asset to the committee, so I fully support.
Great.
If you needed a second, I would move.
Okay, I.
No, on that.
Oh, thank
Do we
you.
have a motion for this reappointment?
I move that the select board reappoint Patrick Autilio to the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion for a 2-year term beginning April 2nd, 2024 and ending April 1st, 2026.
Okay, we have a second.
A second. Okay.
We have Sue for a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we're going to consider the reappointment of David Crocco to the Hartford Parks and Rec Commission for a 3-year term beginning April 2nd, 2024 and ending April 1st, 2027. Any discussion? Mary?
I'll just follow what Kim's discussion was. David plays a very strong role in Parks and Rec, and he's very dedicated, as Scott will attest to. And he's done a great job and will continue to do a great job.
Great. Anyone like to make a motion on this? Mary?
I move that the select board consider the reappointment or reappoint David Crocco to the Hartford Parks and Recreation Commission for a 3-year term beginning on April 2nd, 2024 and ending April 1st, 2027.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Kim. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And finally, we have the appointment of Sadie Sarah Woods to the West Hartford Library Board of Trustees for a term beginning April 2nd, 2024 and ending March 4th, 2025. Any discussion on this?
Do you think it's just worth noting for the record that this is typically an elected position? It was not submitted in time to be on the ballot. So just like if there were a vacancy on the board, the board then has the right to appoint someone to that position until the following town meeting. So it's a slightly different than our standard committee appointments.
Anyone like to make a motion?
Question,
Okay.
was there anybody else that applied for this position as a trustee?
I'm not aware. Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to consider to approve the appointment of Sarah Woods to the West Hartford Library Board of Trustees for a term beginning April 2nd, 2024 and ending March 4th, 2025.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ida. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Great. Now we're making great time here. So we're up to the town manager's report. John?
Our friend Dominic would be so thrilled with our efficient.
I know.
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. First of all, today is my 6-month anniversary here on the job, and I'm
Yay.
very pleased to be working with everybody and getting to know everybody. Thank you very much.
The honeymoon's over.
Yes, if you say so. I also want to let everybody know that Paula Nolte is back on the job as of today. So we have a fully intact town manager's office, and I'm very excited about that. Finally, I just want everybody to remember and maybe put in their calendars the fact that there will be a dedication ceremony for the new World War I and II monument on Monday, May 27th, 1 p.m. at Veterans Park, which is located on Railroad Row in beautiful downtown White River Junction.
Questions for John? Lynn?
Hey, John, can we get an update in regards to the kiosk that was there? I did travel down to Welltech, who had the task of remanufacturing the kiosk platform, and they have the kiosk completed, ready for installation. They're trying to get some word back from the town in regards to that. So you shake your head about.
Scott, do you have anything to add to this?
So the kiosk is ready.
Yeah.
They're going to install it the end of April.
Okay.
So we've been in contact with them all along. I
Okay.
think maybe what you're referring to is the panels that,
No, the guy down there said he was waiting to hear back from somebody.
I don't know when
regards
you
to-
talked to him, but probably two weeks ago or so, we made the
commitment of end of April. So
Okay.
that's when it's gonna get installed.
What about the panels? Because he's waiting on word to the panels.
Well, the old panels are gonna go back on it, and then when the new panels have been vetted out and all the new information has been produced, and all the old information, some of the misspelled words that apparently are on there get taken care of, then they're gonna produce new panels to put on there.
So, okay.
So the old ones will just go back on, so it's not a,
The gentleman I spoke to was Dan Richardson.
yep, Dan.
Yeah, Dan Richardson. Yeah, he's the guy. Okay, he said he was waiting to get word from the town as far as what to do with the panels. So,
Yeah, maybe it's the panels, so
Yeah,
I'll
he-
reach out to him if there's confusion there, but I know the end of April it's gonna get. installed.
probably, okay. Yeah, he was waiting to hear what was going on with the panels. And then he said he's waiting for a good day to install it. So it will be done before the dedication at least. So,
Lenny, I can tell you the DPW is on standby, waiting for Mary Kay's heads up that the bricks have been delivered because
Okay.
they'll help transport them to where they need to go.
okay, yeah, I'm just concerned about getting that kiosk back up. So, and it looks great. It's made out of galvanized steel. It looks really good. So they said they might have a little bit of difficulty with getting it back in because they're going to have to put some more holes in, but they said they can get that done. So,
And again, given that SIGACs are widely published and available on the website for anybody interested in reviewing them closely, I don't see a need to highlight anything in particular. from them.
Any questions for John? Okay, I don't see any, so thank you, John. So we are gonna move on. We have remarks from the Connecticut River Conservancy on the relicensing of the Wildwood Dam. So I believe Scott and then is it Kathy?
Kathy first, yep.
Great.
Oh, wait, there it is. Okay. So,
Kathy, if you could identify yourself and then.
Oh.
Floor is yours.
Oh, you're in the hole there.
I'm in the hole. It's all right. Yeah, thank you. I'm Kathy Erfer. I am the river steward for Vermont for the Connecticut River Conservancy. We, as an organization, we're a nonprofit organization that's been around since 1952, protecting the Connecticut River and trying to enhance the river and the communities surrounding it. This particular project, I'm going to provide a few, like we have various versions of this presentation. I'm trying to this evening provide you with the shorter version, and then I can answer any questions.
Great.
Just because it can be painful depending on the level of, in-depthness you want to go into. But for this particular project and this relicensing, we've actually been working on this for 12 years, and it's going to be probably a 40-year license. It's either a 30 to 50-year license. So we literally we've been billing this essentially as your once in a lifetime opportunity to affect what's going to be in this license for the coming several decades. So I will run through these slides, and this is to really kind of provide some of the context and the background, and then hand it over to Scott, who I think has some more detail that's specific to Hartford. So we started reaching out to all of the towns in the project area, and it's not just the Wilder facility, it's actually 5 facilities. in October, we started reaching out to towns because we are anticipating this deadline, which we now know is April 22nd, which we just learned in February. They set this comment deadline. So the facilities affect over 175 miles of river in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. There are 16 towns in Vermont, 14 towns in New Hampshire, 5 towns in Massachusetts. As I said, the license is 40 years long, so this is really our one chance to engage. And under this relicensing, hydropower projects, when they get a new license, they have to mitigate for their impacts to the river and to the communities. And what that mitigation can look like a lot of different types of things. It could be changes in operation, which is one of the things in play here, but it could be adding additional boat launch areas. It could be providing funding for invasive species. It can look like a lot of different types of things for mitigation. The projects, you all know where the Wilder Dam is. It also includes the Bellows Falls Dam and the Vernon Dam. These 3 are owned by Great River Hydro. And then it also encompasses 2 facilities in Massachusetts, the Northfield Mountain Pump Storage Facility and the Turner's Falls Dam, which is owned by a separate company, F.E.R.C. So in hydropower relicensing since 1986, so the last time these facilities were licensed, it was 1979. In 1986, federal law changed to explicitly require what is called equal consideration of some of the other federal laws. So my little chart here is trying to describe that the license is supposed to balance a lot of other considerations in addition to the generation of electricity. Some of those things are recreation, the consideration of the state's ability to protect their own water and uphold their water quality standards, considerations of like specific endangered species that may be impacted, and then national historic preservation issues, which include archaeological considerations, historic buildings, and also includes traditional cultural relationships with the river. And the entire process also will need to go through, on the federal level, what's called the NEPA process, where F.E.R.C will need to develop an environmental impact statement to consider the cumulative impact of all 5 of these facilities together. So ideally, what is in the license is centered among all of those considerations. So a little bit about Great River Hydro as a company. It is an LLC. The dots on the map there are all of the facilities that are owned by Great River Hydro. So it includes the projects at 15 Mile Falls, which is the Moore, Comerford, and McIndoes dams, a few further upriver that are water storage dams that actually feed water down through the system, and then a bunch of dams, as you'll see, on the Deerfield River, which is in the lower left. Great River Hydro, and this is when you have these larger kind of hydro facilities, they're often treated as assets that are bought and sold by even larger companies. So Great River Hydro in particular these facilities were initially owned by New England Power, and then they were sold to TransCanada. And you may remember years ago, there was a conversation about whether the towns or the state should purchase these facilities. After they were owned by TransCanada, they were sold in 2017, I believe, to a company called ArcLight, which was an investment firm out of Boston. And when they were sold to ArcLight, that's when they were established under this umbrella of Great River Hydro as an LLC. And then most recently, Great River Hydro, the company, the LLC, was purchased by Hydro-Quebec last February. So I put this slide in just to kind of, provide a little understanding of the scale of the companies and some of the money that's involved. So when this is from Hydro-Quebec's press release, when they purchased Great River Hydro, and they said they anticipate an average of 171 million of added revenue per year for all of these facilities, including the ones on the Deerfield and further up on the Connecticut River. And because of Great River Hydro's ownership of all of those facilities on the Connecticut River, they actually control the entire flow of water through the Connecticut River between Vermont and New Hampshire. So this licensing process started 12 years ago, as I said. There's been lots of studies. Like as an organization, we've been involved that whole time. We've requested studies, we've commented on studies, like we've engaged repeatedly. Over the course of 2020, we and several other stakeholders were involved in a negotiated conversation with Great River Hydro about changes in how they're going to operate under this new license. And this slide kind of explains that change. When they submitted their final application in December of 2020, it included this operational change as their preferred alternative. So the stakeholders and Great River Hydro are in agreement that this will be a better pathway forward. So the change encompasses, the way that Wilder, Bellows, and Vernon have been functioning over the past 40 years are essentially as peaking facilities, meaning that primarily they have been, the river would reach the dam, would fill up behind the dam, and then around 4 in the afternoon, and I'm totally generalizing, it depends on the day, but around 4 in the afternoon, they would start to generate electricity, and they would move the river through the turbines to generate electricity, and they might generate until 10 o'clock at night or something like that. Different every day, sometimes twice a day. But in that, what happens is that you have no water coming out of the face of the dam. When they begin generating, suddenly you have essentially what would be like a storm surge of water coming out of the face of the dam. And then the area behind the dam, the pool or the impoundment, starts to drop. And so their daily operations for the past 40 years have included this draining of the river and refilling of the river daily, sometimes twice a day. And so there have been impacts on the banks of the river. And it's also a pretty incredible change when you think of the species in the river and what they're adapted to. Some of the impacts include, like when you have a dam in the river, sediment builds up behind the dam. The below part of the river on the downstream side of the dam often is starved of sediment. There can be impacts from the velocity of flows. The areas behind the dam, because the water is still and not moving, it's absorbing sunlight, so the temperature can go up. That reduces dissolved oxygen. So there's a bunch of ecological impacts from that type of controlling of the river. The agreement that we came to is essentially moving those 3 facilities from this peaking operation to what is called run of river or inflow equals outflow. So the idea being that instead of holding the river back, they're going to be generating 24 hours a day, moving the river through those 3 facilities, which is a more natural way for the river to flow. And we came to some specific agreements that constrains, how they move the river around. And that's this quick list here that I'll try to go through. One is that this base operation is going to be inflow equals outflow. So they'll be generating electricity 24 hours a day. They will have a target water surface elevation at the dam, each dam, with a 1-foot bandwidth, meaning that they would be operating essentially within 6 inches of dropping the pool down and refilling it. And as a comparison right now, that's a 3 to 5 foot range generally. We agreed to specific hours. Electricity generators like the hydro facilities, there's a bunch of different markets that they can engage in to earn money, and they operate in quite a number of different ways. One of the things that's important for hydro facilities is grid stability. So, and one of their revenue sources are through a capacity market, which is only connected to their ability to peak, or in this case, the way what we framed it as is flexible operation, right? So we've been able to agree with them, carve out a specific number of hours in each month based on habitat concerns where they can peak, right? And so you see December through March, it's 65 hours a month. So one way of thinking about this is like they have 65 hours in the bank, and they can choose over the course of December when they're going to use those hours. And so it's a specific number of hours where they can peak, drop that surface water level, and increase the velocity of the flow out of the face of the dam. April to June, 10 hours. June is one of the most sensitive months for fish spawning, you know, and also mussel, like there's freshwater mussels in the river, so mussel reproduction. So that's why it's the most limited amount of number of hours in April, May, and June. A few more hours for July, October, and then in November, 42 hours in total, but there's some very specific protocols for actually protecting the freshwater mussels. So in November, they will be lowering the impoundments to drive the freshwater mussels into the sediment to protect them for that more hours peaking over the winter and ice flows and things like that. Yeah.
Can you tell me how this compares to current operations as far as number of hours and amount of water flow?
Yeah, I actually have a graph that the company provided for us to try to explain that.
Okay.
And then one other thing before I move on to that is that right now they can go from passing no water to passing like 14,000 CFS, which would be for wild or like full tilt in 10 minutes. Under this scenario in their normal operations, they would up ramp and down ramp, meaning that they would take an hour or two to move from, 800 CFS to 4,000 CFS to 8,000 CFS over a couple of hours. And then when they're reducing their the electricity production, they would down ramp, going from maybe 14,000 to 10,000, 6,000 until they meet input. So those are the things that are the constraints that were built into our negotiation. And then the other one is they are required or will be required to refill the impoundment within 48 hours. So within that 1 foot, if they drop it down, they have to refill it within 48 hours. So this kind of describes the difference. In that first column, that is how they've been operating for 40 years. Those are 3 different years. So it's 2003, 2006, 2009. It's showing July through October. And what you see there with the line, the axis on the left is the cubic feet per second coming out of the face of the dam in this case. So what you're seeing on the left is the peaking going from 800 CFS to like 8,000 and then for a number of hours and then back down to 800 CFS. And so the hydrograph looks like that because each one of those lines is jumping up and down and up and down. The middle column is the exact same time period in the exact same years, but that's what the natural hydrograph would look like if the dams were not in the river at all. So you can see the difference. These dams are very important to the grid. So we went into the negotiation knowing that they're not coming out of the river and we're not asking for them to come out of the river. We're trying to find like the middle ground. So if you look at the third column, that reflects inflow equals outflow with the dams in the river with a certain amount of peaking. So you can see the hydrograph is closer to a natural hydrograph. Yeah. And that is the reduction in impact that we were looking for.
So the inflow outflow is just more like what the river would naturally.
Yeah, right.
Do you have that in terms of kilowatt hours?
What?
Do you have that in terms of kilowatt hours we're able to produce?
I don't have it in terms of kilowatt hours. And but it's not, it's probably in their license application in terms of kilowatt hours. It's I have it in terms of the economics, but I'd have to look it up for kilowatt hours, but it's not a significant difference.
Good.
This is one of the graphs they shared with us to try to illustrate it for us. And so what they did is they took a real water data from February of 2009. The top two lines in the graph are connected to the right side, which is the water surface elevation behind the dam. Again, this is Wilder as our example. The darker blue line is exactly what the surface water elevation did in February of 2009. That's how they operated. So what you're seeing there over the course of the month of February is the surface water elevation shift up and down. The turquoise line at the top is if they were operating under this new scenario, what they would have done. So you can see the dip is constrained by the 1 foot boundary. And each time there's a dip, that is them choosing to peak for a shorter specific period of time, which is probably, an hour or two, as opposed to like 6 hours, which is what they've sort of been to. The bottom part of the graph corresponds to the left side, and that is the cubic feet per second flow coming out of the turbines. Wilder can go up to 14,000 CFS at their highest generating capacity. And so the red line, it's a little hard to see the colors, but the red line is how they actually operated in February 2009. And you can see each time that the line goes up, that's when they were peaking and passing, a larger amount of water. So in that first time the line goes up, it's going from 800 CFS to about 7,000 or 8,000 for several hours. And then they drop it back down to only passing 800 CFS before the next peak. There's two other lines kind of embedded in there. There's a green line, which is the inflow equals outflow with no peaking at all. And then there's a purple line, which is what their proposed operation would have looked like in February of 2009 had they done it that way. And so what you can see with the purple line is that in all cases, there is more water moving through the river, right? Like it doesn't really get below, I think it's around 2,000 CFS. So the river is flowing with more water in it. And then you have peaks when they have chosen to peak, and you'll see that the peak corresponds with the dip at the top. They're less extreme and there are fewer of them. That is what we were looking for in terms of reducing the impact of how they are peaking the water through the system. And there are some cases, like there's a whole stretch of several days there where they don't peak at all, right? And so in that case, that's following the natural hydrograph of just the river flowing through the dam. I thought I had another example, but so in this case, the critters that are of concern that sort of drove this conversation, these are some of the threatened and endangered species that they had to consider as we've been going through the past 12 years of conversations. And then also these are some of the migratory fish that come up the river to spawn that are species of concern. The short-nosed sturgeon on the bottom makes it up to the Turner's Falls area. We have anecdotal evidence that it's has been caught below and above the Vernon Dam, but we don't have, documented, federal documentation of it. So short-nosed sturgeon has come into play for the projects in Massachusetts, but not so much for the ones up here. As we negotiated about the operations, the conversation was constrained specifically to the flow of the water through the dams, right? There are a lot of other impacts and we didn't talk about those. There was no agreement on those. When the company submitted their final application in December of 2020, after coming to this agreement, we expected that there would be other mitigation in the application for the other things we were concerned about, and there was little to none. Since then, they have had a separate settlement agreement with the fisheries biologists to come up with an agreement about fish passage and improvements to the fish ladders, which is good. One of our problems with that is they're going to take 20 years to do that, which we think is that timeline could be shortened. But the other things on this list, consideration of erosion and mitigating for erosion along the banks and mitigation for recreation, have not really been fleshed out, and there's not been a lot of detail in the application. And so in this is some detail. So after they submitted their application in December 2020, F.E.R.C requested some additional information, which they can do through the process. And one of the things they asked for was specific costs of environmental mitigation spread out over the 40 years. And so Great River Hydro provided this Excel spreadsheet, one for each of the facilities. This one happens to be Wilder, with some broken down cost estimates of what they would do for mitigation. There's no narrative along with this. There's no explanation of like how communities would be engaged. And when you think, and when you look at the total number, over 40 years, it is pitifully small, in our opinion. So just to break the numbers down a little bit more, they're a private company. We don't have access to their books. In the application process, they have to submit an Exhibit D. So they have to provide like 1 year of financial information. They had to submit an initial final license application in 2017. Most of the studies weren't done. So they had to submit an amended one in 2020. So what you're looking at here is information we gleaned from that Exhibit D. The first column has revenue and operating cost information from the 2016, which happens to be, I believe, the lowest electricity rate year for the past decade. So, if you put all the projects together, total revenues just about 28 million. Their operating costs around 24 million. So in that worst year, their net revenue is around $4 million. The information from the next column is from 2019, and you see that was a little bit of a better year. So their revenue from that year was around $9 million. And because they're proposing this operational change, F.E.R.C asked them specifically to calculate their expected revenue with this change to see what it would do. And that's what the third column is. So instead of 9 million in 2019, if they were operating in this more protective way of the river, they would be making 8.6 million. And in the narrative of the application, they say that they expect a negative 1% decrease in revenues. So it is not really hurt that the change in operation is not hurting them significantly at all. And then what they're proposing in that spreadsheet for all the projects annually for all the mitigation would be at $877,000, which is pretty insignificant when you consider what they're making, what they're in profit each year. So
that would be annual, but for all the things they listed, like erosion stuff, recreation, like all the different types of mitigation would be a total of 800.
Yeah, including fish passage and traditional cultural properties considerations. So that's everything.
Can I ask a
Stu?
question that I know the word annualized. I would like you to explain how it applies here. We're not saying that that's the figure we're gonna get every year. Annualized is an average. What does that mean?
It's an average. I'm just trying to as we've been working on this over 12 years, people have been concerned that our advocacy to protect the river and to return some of this profit to the communities would somehow damage the companies or put them out of business. I want to make sure people understand that is not the case. That is not happening. They're incredibly valuable. They're incredibly valuable to the grid. And the mitigation that they're offering at the moment is very minimal. So they can really afford to, it's our public resource that they are using for public good, because obviously we're using electricity right now, right? We need ways of generating electricity. And they are also using as, a form of generating profits, which you can tell by how they are sold from one asset company to the other. So, what we're really arguing is that some of that profits should come back to the local communities and should come back to support the river, our
Yeah.
ability to access the river.
Is that part of the agreement, or are you trying to negotiate that? Are they nailed down on that?
No.
Okay.
No, which is why we are encouraging people to comment, right? So
Right.
F.E.R.C, these are the next steps. So F.E.R.C, the way these licensings go, all these studies are done, you collect the information, and then the company proposes what they're gonna do. In any good negotiating, you're gonna lowball, right? So I think they're assuming they're going to be expected to do more than what they're proposing. F.E.R.C issues what's called a ready for environmental analysis, which is like a federal trigger in federal law that essentially says we have all of the application information we need and the public can now comment on this. And so that's what we're faced with right now, is this open public comment period with the deadline of April 22nd.
Brandon? You have a question?
I do. And so has Hydro-Quebec submitted a proposal to not change its operation, given that it would only make, $400,000 less, on these, based on the changes you're recommending? So in other words, have they said they don't want to change based on this projection?
No, well, even though Hydro-Quebec just bought Great River Hydro, they're really functioning as their own LLC. And my understanding is that Hydro-Quebec is not interfering or trying to direct Great River Hydro in any particular way.
So
having said that, Great River Hydro, what is in the application for this operational change is their preferred alternative. This is what they have agreed to do. And I think what they want to do, probably for reasons that I don't even understand, but I could guess, it's a way of actually diversifying their asset, right? Like further upstream, upriver at 15 Mile Falls, they still have peaking facilities. So from a company perspective, it may be strategic to actually move these three to be run of river because they're baseload power. I think our negotiation was working on a lot of the details of this, but we didn't drag them into it at all.
So to be clear, the changes you've presented tonight, writ large, those were something that they actually are proposing. Okay.
Yeah,
That
we've agreed to, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, our main coming to the towns is we're pleased with that change. And also, this is a 40-year license. And so they need to provide more in terms of mitigation for the other impacts.
So a lot of things that have come to us, particularly from a state level in terms of highways in particular, they basically come to us to tell us what's going to happen, and we don't have a lot of control over that. So my question here is, does the Connecticut River Conservancy or the town of Hartford have any power to hold up F.E.R.C's issuing of the license for Great River Hydro in any way, shape, or form? Or is this something that just because the powers that be on a federal energy level and a state energy level, they have the authorization to go ahead regardless of what C.R.C. or the town says? I just trying to understand what sort of controls the town or Connecticut River Conservancy really have in this situation. Because as I said, we've been faced with many areas that we've had issues that the state just ignores for sake of they know better.
Yeah. So FERC's not here, right? So there are these public comment periods because they're relying on local boards, local citizens to communicate to them what they're concerned about, where they should focus their energies, what you want for mitigation, if there are specific things in the license you want. And that public comment process is built into this federal process. So if no one were to comment, the company would provide this application and FERC would say yes, right? Because what other information do they have to go on besides their own analysis of what's in the application? So they really rely on public comment to clarify for them what communities are concerned about, what communities might want. And in particular for the towns, you know, as we've been communicating with the towns, the two things that have emerged for most of the towns are really focused around concerns around erosion and then concerns for additional mitigation for recreational assets to support the recreational economy of the towns. So one area of leverage is commenting in this federal process. In addition, they're going to have to go through a state process in both Vermont and New Hampshire because they're going to have to get a 401 water quality certification. So there will be another public opportunity in the next 12 months to comment on that water quality draft water quality certification. Because of the separation between state jurisdiction and federal jurisdiction, if the state puts a condition in their water quality certificate, it automatically becomes part of the federal license. So the state can condition some specific things to go in the license to protect water quality in the state.
With all that said, does Great River, does the Hydro Quebec, I guess it is, do they have enough political clout to move ahead regardless? And just consider us, well, let's progress in we're going to do it regardless of the little guy.
Well, they don't, I mean, FERC is making the decision as to what goes in the license, right? They're not making the decision. They can make their arguments just like we can
I
make
just
our
didn't know if they had
arguments.
enough clout to just, you know, and enough political backing
Well,
behind
they
them.
certainly have more lawyers than we do, but
So it seems like,
but in answer to your question about the leverage, right? So Connecticut River Conservancy, right? Like as we've been working through this whole process, like we're doing everything we can to get a really good license to support the river and support the communities. If we get a crappy license out of FERC, we are prepared to appeal that license and
Okay,
start to
that's-
move through a legal process.
That helps me to understand better.
And we are planning to essentially be the lead on that. We're hoping we'll have help. Like it would be great if towns or regional planning commissions or other groups, if we need to go that route. I'm hoping we don't have to go there because I have other things I'd like to be spending my time on, you know, besides just this hydro relationship.
so it seems like our next item is whether we want to submit comments that ask for money as part of the license agreement.
Yeah, and the comments are, it's not necessarily asking for money. It can ask for, it's communicating to FERC the particular things that Hartford may be interested or concerned about or want to see in the license. So mitigation is, it could be money. It could also be, you know, like a really well-developed recreation plan that includes, you know, stakeholder involvement where there are like, maybe there's more boat launches. Maybe there's, you know, one of the things they have proposed is ADA compliant recreational facilities.
Yep.
You know, maybe there's more trails, things like that. It could be, you know, there might be land owned by Great River Hydro in a particular town where like the town would like them to put it under a conservation easement. So it could be a lot of different types of things.
Yeah, can I?
Um,
Yep. Thank you, Kathy. I think you explained it really well. I'm just going to kind of recap and say it in another way because I've been following this process and I was able to attend the public meeting that we also presented, and I really appreciate your thoroughness and kind of engaging the community in this way, and to the, you know, Matt and Scott and everyone else has been involved too. So, I mean, I think so what Kathy is saying is I understand it. FERC is the federal agency that is the regulator that can say yes or no on the relicensing to the private company that owns the dam. So our power as a town and as a community comes in form of being able to make comments to FERC in this, time limited span of time to say, we live here, this is our community, this is what we care about in terms of recreation, erosion, like those are kind of the main ones that we can weigh in on at this point. Because your organization has done a ton of work on the other areas around, the protecting the natural habitat and the, river resource. So, and I want to just repeat what you said in the other meeting, which I thought was really important, which is that like any type of campaign essentially where you're trying to build interest around things that you want to see happen by a bigger organization that has more federal power than you do, repetition is really important. So the town is drafting a comment that will submit as an organization of a town, and then private citizens have the ability to make individual comments. And it's, the more repetition that they see, the more they're going to listen to what those comments are saying. So I think as, citizens, it's, it's important to read the town comment, and then the things that you care about in that, repeat, say it in your own way, make sure you get that in there, as well as put anything else that you really are concerned about in terms of the impacts of the dam on the community. So yeah, just wanted to kind of say in another framing.
I've got a couple things if you don't mind. When the town submits its comment, is it your assessment that the town would then enter into some sort of back and forth with FERC and or Great River Hydro to negotiate some common approach to FERC, for example? Or is it just you put in the comments, FERC will do its magic and let you know?
Yeah, I think more the latter. So there's the formal regulatory process, and then there can be a settlement process or a settlement discussion. Whether that happens or not is always up to the company. FERC cannot require that, right? So I think settlement discussions occur. Well, I guess I can't even actually guess, but I feel like when there's a certain amount of pressure that may be put in terms of the volume of contents for the things that are being asked that may cause the company at a later date to say, let's have a settlement conversation about this, where you then could come to the table. Right now, we're not there and we don't have that option. Our only option right now is to communicate to FERC what the concerns, desires, and needs of the towns are, so they can consider that as they're developing the license article.
Now, the Connecticut River Conservancy has advocated that towns along this riparian area consider hiring an attorney to file motion for leave to participate in the FERC process.
You can comment. So what we have been suggesting is that for the towns, especially the towns where the company actually sits, right, to intervene in the process. The intervention enables you to appeal a license or to take further legal action. If you don't intervene, you don't have that option later on. So, as my mom always said, you can always take off, but you can't always put on. So now is the opportunity to put the coat on or bring the coat with you in case you need it, right? So we're encouraging towns to intervene.
To keep our options open.
To keep your options open, yeah. It doesn't cause anything to occur immediately, but if we were to get a terrible license out of FERC, then we have the option to appeal
You
it.
might make the supposition that strong comments, aggressive comments, followed by an attorney's motion to intervene might bespeak some strength in your position or commitment to getting a fair outcome.
Yeah.
Have what might be a little tangential, but Claire, you're representing the Connecticut River Conservancy. So we have other private dams, or at least one other private dam in the town of Hartford. Do you know, or maybe Scott or Matt, do you know, are they also subject to the same FERC licensing, and is the same process in place for that? thinking of the Simon Pierce Dam.
I can sort of answer that question for Simon Pierce. I think Simon Pierce is exempt. So through F.E.R.C, F.E.R.C has kind of a regular license, which goes on this 30 to 50-year cycle of going through a relicensing. Some of the smaller facilities, and I forget when this was put in place, there is the opportunity to apply for an exemption. It is still a license through F.E.R.C, but what it means is that it never comes up for renewal. So there are some smaller facilities that have a F.E.R.C license that are exempt. And I would have to look up Simon Pierce to know exactly if they have a regular license or exemption. I think they have an exemption. But yeah, all of the hydro facilities with a regular F.E.R.C license are cycling through this relicensing process. So for instance, you know, there's a hydroelectric project attached to the North Heartland, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dam in North Heartland that just finished. They were just issued their license. There's several, like there's like four or five on the Black River in Springfield that are in the middle of the relicensing process and doing studies right now. So all of these are cycling through if they have a regular license. I would have to look to see if Simon Pierce has a license and when that would be up for renewal.
Yeah, I'd be curious, because there are certainly impacts on the community and the ecosystems there that would be interesting to know if the same kind of exercise could be examined, I guess.
Yeah.
We also have the Dewey's Mills Dam. It's in the town of Hartford that should be addressed as well.
Yeah.
John?
Is there rules of thumb that you know of, or do you have an opinion about what percentage of profit should be dedicated to mitigation?
I wish. And I think, you know, the scale of this and I think what comes out in a license for mitigation can be very different. Like if you think of the West Coast, right? There are 4 hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River that through the relicensing process are being taken out. But that's because they have salmon and they have federally recognized tribes that have been engaged in that process. So on a certain extent, like what you end up having in the license really depends on like what levers you have to really push on concerns. And also the consideration of like particular impacts in a specific area. So.
Kim, and then Kathy, if you have another slide to go through.
I think that was almost, this is sort of, so. I'm developing a little bit of PTSD around this whole process. It's okay. So we're in this moment of being able to comment to F.E.R.C. Simultaneously, based on federal law, this issuance of this ready for environmental analysis triggers 2 other things. It triggers F.E.R.C. developing an environmental impact statement as part of the NEPA process, which I believe they have to do within 12 months. And that environmental impact statement will consider the cumulative impact of all 5 of these facilities together. And there will be an opportunity to comment on that as well. And then the companies also have to apply to both Vermont and New Hampshire for a 401 water quality certificate. And there will be a probably 12-month or less period of time where there will also be public hearings and a public comment period on those. So these 3 together are sort of the final opportunity for the public to have any say or communicate to these different entities their concerns. And then F.E.R.C will issue a license, which will have specific articles in it that are requirements, right? And so an article may say something like, you know, within 3 years, you must develop a recreation plan. We would like to influence even the language of those articles to say, in collaboration with stakeholders from all the towns and the project areas, or, you know what I mean? Something like that. They might require a shoreline management plan, which would dictate like how docks are put in or if additional boat launch areas are put in, F.E.R.C might require, and we hope they would require some sort of erosion control plan or long-term monitoring of what this change is going to do for erosion along the river and how sediment flows in the river. So that means that then there will also be a period of time after the license where some of these things will continue to have to get worked out, like the 20 years it's going to take for the fish passage facilities to be upgraded. But I think that was my last slide. So yeah.
Another question. Kathy, have you read the draft letter that John and Scott and Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that did you have any feedback or thoughts on it?
I provided a little bit of feedback and maybe a reference or something. I mean, part of what's really hard about this is this has been like 10 years of information and materials. And as privileged, we are in the privileged position of having been able to track this over the many years. So, you know, we're really trying to support like the regional commissions in the towns and being able to provide that detailed information to back up comments or refer to things. So,
yeah. I mean, I think the letter is really good, and I appreciate I know I gave some formatting comments.
Is the one who deserves the credit.
Okay.
I'm just an occasional editor.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it really covered what was discussed in the informational meeting really well, and thanks for taking my input on just some of the formatting and bolding some of the main requests. I think the one other thought I had based on what you had said in the last presentation about how to think sort of broadly about, you know, we're focused on Kilowatt Park being as a huge aspect of what the dam impacts, but it really is the whole surrounding area, including what's below the dam. And so I'm just wondering if we want to name, if strategically, if it makes sense to like name like Lyman Park, for example, in the letter as well. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. I know there's a lot in there already, but I did take that to heart what you said about like, you know, it's not just Kilowatt, where it's like the whole area that the dam impacts, and that's the whole side of our town, you know. So I don't know. That was one additional thought I had, but I think it's in a really good place.
Yeah, I think any additional details and kind of like what you were saying, right? Like there's individual comments, there's town comments, there's regional planning commission comments, and there's our comments, which are going to be like 30 pages long with like legal references. So, you know, I feel like all of those put together kind of create a scaffolding of communication. And so any additional specific details or concerns, I think are good to include because they help kind of like illustrate for F.E.R.C the story of the town and what you're interested in, how you want to like think about developing the town over.
Are we talking about one license or a series of licenses, one for each facility?
There's a separate license for each facility, but each one has one license, and in that license we'll have like a whole list of specific requirements.
And do we know if Two Rivers is generating their own comments?
We spoke with the Regional Planning Commission, with Two Rivers, Mount Escutney, Wyndham Regional, and Upper Valley, Lake Sunapee, and the Southwest region in New Hampshire. All three of them together, I think, are going to try to do a joint comment.
Yeah, I just, you spoke a little bit ago about intervening in a legal way and kind of referred to some kind of deadline for doing that. I just want to make sure that we get we as a town, the decision to weigh in as to whether we'll do that well before the deadline.
I can tell you, I've already contacted the council and given him the draft comments along with the Conservancy's comments and asked that they at least prepare a document to move for leave to participate in the F.E.R.C process. My theory being that all we're doing is basically filing an appearance. And I think that's going to have some value. We could certainly consult one another if we decide to take any substantive action, but I think at least to keep our options open, it's kind of a no-brainer to make that next step, which I think will be relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was on that previous slide, but I'd love it if we could just publicly state pathway for individuals to comment as well?
Yeah, we have, so the deadline for everyone is April 22nd. As of today, like, I feel like I can't ever say anything without qualifying it. So as an aside, the company below us, First Light, just submitted in the middle of this comment period, like 6 additional huge documents with all kinds of additional information. So we've requested an extension for First Light. I have no idea if FERC is going to extend that for Great River Hydro or not. So right now the deadline is April 22nd. We may get a little more time, but I kind of doubt it. The process through the FERC website, they have, there's a process for organizations to comment, and then there's a different pathway if an individual wants to comment, which is supposed to be easier. It's still pretty hard. I'm getting feedback on. My understanding from FERC is that people actually can just mail letters, and that will also get into the docket. But on our website, we have a whole page dedicated to this. Our website is ctriver.org. And under our work, you'll see a link that says hydroelectric or something like that. And it provides all of the background. There is a link there to a step-by-step guidance document for how to comment. And we also have been hosting weekly, what we're calling hydropower office hours, which you can register for and just join us on Zoom. And we're there to try to answer questions or, support anybody in their comments or provide additional information.
Maybe
Sue?
we could share that.
Do you have a follow?
I just want to say it might be nice if we could share that on the town's website and social media if possible.
So I'm going to call this a point of ignorance. With the question that was just asked, what role does the board play in whether there's going to be an intervention by the town? Is there a role, or is that a decision that you make?
Let's put it this way, it's never come up. This is a 40-year process. I don't know the answer to that, but I considered that this was a fairly straight ahead opportunity to protect the town's interest at what I think will be a very minimum fee, and it's been advocated by the lead organization. And I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't protect the town's interest in at least having an attorney file the document. I also happen to believe that, again, with the combination of some pretty ambitious requests and with the appearance of an attorney in the process, I think it sends a good signal to Great River Hydro and to FERC that our concerns should be taken seriously.
I just don't want to spend a lot of time worrying about it if it's not a decision we have to make.
Right.
That was all the question.
Easily to be researched, and I can get back to you as to where the line is on that, on the retention of legal counsel. Thank you.
Any more questions for Kathy before we hear from Scott? Thanks, Kathy.
Helpful.
Very helpful.
Yes, very helpful.
Informative.
Are you able to stay, Kathy?
Yeah, sure, I can.
For Scott's presentation?
Yes, yes.
On that too.
Or let me, Matt, why don't you sit at that?
Screen share is stopped.
We're at 5B now with the.
What's that?
Or we've moved on to 5B now.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Sorry.
All right, Scott.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Scott Hauser, Director of Parks and Recreation for the town. I want to thank Kathy for all of her help, because when this came before us, it was a nightmare
to try to figure this out, and it's, think she's got PTSD, I've got PTSD. Especially from John with all the comments that he had on the comments, so.
Throw away my red pen.
So anyhow, and Matt Osborne helping with this with the Conservation Commission Planning Development Office. So it's really been a considerably big effort between us all in a very short period of time. So, so I'm gonna, the public end of things or the towns end of things is related to comments really comes into effect that, because the town manages a large section of the property, not the dam, right? But a large section of the property that is under a lease agreement, which is kind of a whole another animal in itself that's going to have to get worked out related to what our comments are and what might be able to happen there. But we feel that because of the licensing process, that's our opportunity to reopen the agreement and renegotiate or talk about the use of the space for recreation. So several years ago, a master plan was put together in 2008 that had a huge amount of development along the property that's managed by the town. And so when this process came up, it was our opportunity now to look at that plan as well as look at other alternatives. So so that's kind of where we're at. So our process involved meetings with Kathy, town manager, planning and development office, to talk about what this is all about. And you got the condensed version of that. We were lucky enough to have the big version, which was very supportive and helpful, but it was like, wow, look, what are we involved in here? But so through the process of our communication and looking at the master plan, and then also discussion in a community meeting that took place, a lot of things came to fruition that it was important for these types of comments to be recommended to be addressed within the F.E.R.C license. So that's what I'm just going to briefly cover, and then we can answer some questions that you might have. Obviously, all this stuff is in the letter, with the exception of a couple items that, after conversations, we've changed the slide since the packet went out on Friday. But addressing the bank erosion is obviously an important topic that came out of our discussions. One really important item was opening up the access to connect Vermont and New Hampshire. So we've included that as a potential comment. And even over the last few days, we've looked up that, there's multiple dams across the country where people walk across, drive across, all the above. So that was really important to folks. So we felt that that was important for the town to support. Working with the land trust to create a conservation easement in several sections of the property that are on the Hartford side. Addressing decommissioning plan. However, I think that's something that's really way above the town's ability to understand or require or request, but it's more at the F.E.R.C level, probably because they have requirements anyway related to any kind of decommissioning plan. But we felt it was important that they know, F.E.R.C knows that the town's concerned about that. And then required funding support for the kilowatt master plan that was created in 2008. There's projects that are being funded and funds are available to various properties up and down the Connecticut. So we would like to see the town receive some type of funding related to the support that we provide their property and the space. In the agreement that was signed in 2006 with the town, it specifically states that the town would manage and take care of the property at no cost to Great River Hydro. So we're going to ask for the cost. We did a
Park assessment, I believe it was back in 2016 or 17, where we looked at all of the parks. We kind of did a cost benefit analysis, our level. We didn't hire somebody to do it. We took a look at all of our parks, all of our expenses related to it, and kilowatt based on acreage. It was around $60,000 of cost to the town on Parks and Recreation to maintain that property. So we feel it's important for us to start receiving costs to maintain the property as a reimbursement. On top of that, we're looking at the master plan in relationship to some of the improvements, the portage improvements, parking, access, the inability to access it only by vehicular access. We're looking at pathways. The main road that goes down to the launch is a gravel road that needs a tremendous amount of work and should have some pedestrian access along with a traveled access by vehicle. New docks, pavilions were listed in the master plan. Some bathroom ADA accessible facilities would be important for the community to be able to utilize this valuable resource for many years to come. We put a dollar amount to that of annually about $120,000 for improvements, for capital improvements. We looked at that throughout the entire license. It would also increase, same with the actual costs, increase by 5% annually throughout the license to keep up with inflation. But improved access, and I think I mentioned pretty much everything that's listed on there that would be important to us in order to implement that plan. The dollar amount, a 40-year period of time, or 50, $4 to $5 million more based on the increase of 5% annually. But we feel that there's at least that amount of improvements that could be done there. When you start talking about pervious type of materials that would be required to build the road with, as well as parking areas, pathways based on its proximity to the river. When we start talking about accessible structures, we start talking about the road access, those things add up really quick. So anyhow, that's the ask.
So it seems like the worst that could happen really is FERC to say no,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
Or they say not all of that,
Or not all of it.
yeah.
Right.
Or we'll work with the town. We won't
Yeah.
give you the money, but as your projects start developing, maybe they'll come back and say, okay, we're committed to doing that over a period of years. We don't know, but we need to ask.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one that swept this one under the rug because I didn't want to deal with it, or and then 20 years from now it was like that director Hausler didn't do anything about it and didn't ask. Kathy, I think, is our source to confirm that lots of other towns with similar impacts from hydro projects, rec areas to maintain, typically are compensated, are paid for some of their costs.
Or the company is doing, do you want the microphone?
Sure, yeah. That'd be great. Or right there.
Yeah, so part of what's difficult about this is the fact that the licenses are so long.
Right.
So you have to project yourself back to 1979, right? When we were using typewriters. What was required in 1979 is nothing compared to what is being required in more current licenses. And so under this previous license, Great River Hydro wasn't required to engage in this kind of like recreational mitigation to the extent that we expect that they're going to be. And so over the you know, over the period of time, they've essentially kind of come up with these, you know, different relationships with different towns, right? So I called around a little bit to try to understand. I didn't hear back from Rockingham, so I don't know the exact arrangement there, but it's a similar situation. They have Herrick's Cove. It's owned by Great River Hydro. I'm not sure that the town of Rockingham maintains that. I think Great River Hydro may, right? The Fish Passage facility at Bellows Falls Dam has an interpretive center that's run by the Nature Museum at Grafton. Great River Hydro provides a donation to the Nature Museum every year to provide that service for them. It's a very casual relationship. And even the Nature Museum, I was suggesting like maybe that you would like to formalize this a little more to make sure that, you know, you're compensated for the services you're providing to Great River Hydro. Because the bottom line is it is their responsibility to provide this recreational access and assets. If you go further downriver, I called the town manager of Montague, Massachusetts, to ask about F.E.R.C. F.E.R.C pays for all of, you know, there's recreational facilities around the projects in Montague, Turner's Falls Dam and Northfield. They pay for all of them. They are plowing those roads. They are, you know, mowing the lawns. So from my perspective, it's pretty clear that it is the company's responsibility to provide this as mitigation. They haven't needed to really over the past 40 years because the license is that old. So my expectation is that what is required of them under this new license is going to be quite more stringent. And in other licensings, you know, things have been required like purchasing land and installing additional boat launch areas or things like that. So, yeah.
And I think it's important just to recognize too is, you know, 2006 is when the town started taking over the operation, the park maintenance and all. I mean, it could be that Great River Hydro comes back and maybe they're required to do it all, but maybe they decide that, you know, they want to implement these projects based on community input. They want to manage the property or take it all over again. We don't know. Would we want that? Not sure. We'd like to have a little more control of the operation of it and how the space is used, but you know, it's something to be considered.
Yeah, I have a question. And I don't know if this is the place for it, but it's kind of an overarching thing. We're all very much aware of climate change and what it's doing to New England. And I know you talk about bank erosion, but even the recreation stuff is going to be impacted by, you know, lots of water, lots of rain coming down, like last July, the 9, 10, 11 inches. And would they consider, would Great River Hydro consider, you know, if it takes out docks, if it, you know, boat launches and everything, is that a part of it, or is that just right now considered, you know, annual maintenance? I'm just wondering, are they preparing for things like this? I don't know. That's a big question.
Yeah, it's not. So they're going to be required to develop a recreation plan that should cover the 40 years and all of the areas. So those types of questions are important to include in the discussion when they're developing a recreation plan to make sure that they are considering those kinds of things. In the recreation plan, they could maybe provide a mitigation fund, you know what I mean, for those kinds of repairs, or some sort of maintenance operation like grant that towns can apply for. So we don't know how that's all going to flesh out right now in the process. We really need to communicate to F.E.R.C that there are recreational needs and that they need to do some sort of planning process. It's super irritating that it is so bureaucratic and it takes all these steps to get there. But yeah, what I am hoping for is that we get a really robust recreation plan that considers all kinds of things, including like what you're talking about. The other sort of climate change question or thing is, like, in the beginning of this process, we had the opportunity to request studies. And one of the studies Connecticut River Conservancy requested was to look at climate change and what that meant for changes in the river system, and F.E.R.C did not feel that was necessary. So we didn't get an opportunity to study that over the past 12 years. Great River Hydro, because they control the whole river, you know, I feel like climate change impacts maybe, like, we may have more issues on our tributaries in terms of actual water than on the main stem. But having said that, I still have talked to farmers in certain areas of the river, you know, where like their land is getting flooded as Great River Hydro is trying to control how the water gets moved through the system when we have high flows. So that's pretty complicated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brandon, question?
Sure. I noticed, well, first of all, I'm very much in support of the town's comments as I read them drafted in the preparation packet there. One of the things I read was that it seems as though we believe Great River Hydro is currently and has been in violation of its current agreement with F.E.R.C to, quote, maintain public access properties owned by Great River Hydro. And that, I mean, to me, that sounds like a rather strong position to be in. Or
It's good that you identified that word. Just today, Scott Hausner and I were in my office talking about how do we feel about the draft. And I told him that the word that I had used, which was violate, might be a bit over the top. And I suggested that we change that to Great River Hydro has fallen short of its obligations. I thought that would be a good wordsmithing modification. So that's in the pipeline.
I appreciate that. But I'm thankful to all of you that you at least have a handle on this previous or current agreement that's in force.
More questions? We have a motion.
I do have one more question. I just, you know, there's such a really engaged group that came to the last meeting, and John, I'm really not trying to create more work for you, but I do wonder if it would be helpful to re-engage. I know when we have the email list to have like another, and I'd be willing to help organize this in some way, but like another time or session where it's like, now's the time we're going to submit our comments together so we can like offer technical support to people.
I'll tell you that the draft was recently circulated by Scott or Matt.
Matt.
To all the attendees.
Yes, I saw that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm more thinking about the actual submission of the comments, and I don't know, I'm looking at my fellow Kilowatt Park user here, like, I don't, if that would be a helpful thing for folks to, you know, just go through that together. I know you have your office hours, and maybe we could do it. Maybe I'll reach out to you offline and see if I take this on as something, because I think it'd be worthwhile to reach out to those folks and make sure that we have like a designated time when people can like kind of get their comments in.
Maybe one last window.
Yeah.
You know, you might have comments come in individually or phone them or email them. But we're gonna
Yeah,
close the
yeah.
door at a certain time and submit them.
And to ensure that people really have seen the letter, and, you know, are able to draw from the letter and incorporate it. Opportunity. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I might, yeah, so I'll.
So, and Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but the town's comment letter is based on, you know, our gathering of some information, listening to the public, talking internally as a town, and that comment will go through. I can tell you that the individual process was painful to do it individually. So I think what you're saying is like a process that maybe bullets a little easier for us to circulate to the general public to say, here's the town's comment letter, you know, based on your comments as a community individual, these are the steps that you take to submit your personal comment.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that document exists, sort of a guidance document about how to, but yeah, just make sure that we're kind of having one or two more touches of engagement with those folks who came to the meeting to make sure that they know how to do it on their own.
To people who weren't able to go to the meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how we would do that. I mean, listserv maybe. Yeah, yeah.
Motion.
A question. So maybe I missed this, and excuse me if I did, but currently Hydro-Quebec is under no obligation other than to allow us access in some form or manner, correct? That's the only obligation that they have for recreational. What are the terms of what they are required to under recreational at this point?
I don't really know how to answer that. It's not Hydro-Quebec, it's Great River Hydro,
Hydro.
because
Okay,
it's
so
a
Great River
separate
Hydro,
legal
right.
entity. Under the last relicensing, they probably had to do a recreation plan, and I do not think I have ever been able to find what was required for Wilder. I have seen what was required for Vernon. And part of that recreation plan included like building ball fields and a picnic area and things like that, which were never done.
So we don't know if they're even meeting the obligation they're supposed to meet right now.
Right.
Yeah, I can say that I haven't seen that either, but what we can say is that was it TransCanada? I think that was when the original agreement with the town to manage the property was developed, TransCanada. They supported, the 2008 master plan, so there's some, and they had folks, operators, people that from TransCanada that were part of the 2008 process.
Right. When it switched
so-
entities, did the other entity have any obligation to pick up the former plans that were in place?
So they supported the 2008 master plan. It was the town's responsibility to start implementing that master plan. There were some funds that started it. There were some gates put up, maybe some barricades, some guardrails, some things of that nature. But the full master plan was not implemented, and there was a commitment that the town would put money into a capital reserve to implement the 2008 master plan. But there's no
Commitment to who?
indication. The town.
Who was the
So the town was going to implement it. They were going to fund it and implement those.
TransCanada
improvements.
was going to fund it?
No, the town.
Okay, that's what
The
I'm getting
town.
at. Okay.
Right.
Right, okay. But there was no obligation on
No,
part of the hydro company
no,
in any way, shape, or form. Okay.
it's,
So we have to be very careful as far as how much we are asking of them going forward, because we don't know what we're supposed to be getting versus what we're asking for.
well, I mean, I guess you can look at it two ways. They've, over the period of however many years, even with just the agreement that if they were paying the annual maintenance of the operation, that it would have covered a significant amount of.
Right, but
of
if there's nothing in the
improvements,
paperwork that said they were gonna do that. when
No,
they
there's
take it over
nothing,
by another
it's
entity.
specific that it's the town's responsibility
Right.
to implement
Right. so
that plan.
Under Great
So-
River, yeah, under the Great River Hydro, when they took over, there was no obligation.
But I think
That-
the agree, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the agreement, it's based on the F.E.R.C license too. So no matter who's owning the property
I just want to make sure that we don't
continues. So,
be too forceful of what we're looking for.
but yeah, and I understand where you're coming from, but I also understand that to me, it's an obligation based on, working with Kathy and understanding.
Well, that's why I
The
asked about
importance of
what
it,
their
it's
obligation is, because they could just say, they could come back to us and say, yes, we had an obligation to provide recreational activities, but that means we're just gonna let you use the land and you do with it what you want. And that's what there's a possibility to go back and say that, we give it to you, you do with it what you want, and that's,
Well, that's why we're having these meetings. That's why we had public comment and input to F.E.R.C. So F.E.R.C
It-
can,
I think it would
that
be
in
helpful
the-
if somebody could drag up what sort of obligation that they signed up for when they took over the facility, I guess.
The bottom line is that they benefited basically from free ride that the town has provided in terms of maintaining their lands in a way that meets their obligation to make.
Yeah, but we have
Recreation land
also,
accessible.
yeah, but we have also greatly benefited from
Sure,
that
yeah.
for our townspeople. So it's a win-win for
But
both
then Kathy-
situations.
Then Kathy will remind us that we're not in 1979 anymore. The expectations are much greater for dam owners to do a lot more to mitigate.
Yeah, I mean, I think like conjecturing on, without having found the actual like recreation plan from the last license to know like what they were required to do. You know, there are certain improvements at the park that they probably put in the 80s, right? And that may have met all of what was required of them.
Well, the other
They
question-
still, you know, they're still a company that works in our communities, right? So there's like a line here between what is required of them under the license and what they can choose to do as, you know, as a neighbor or a community member. So they, you know, they donate to different organizations. They, you know, they support our Source to Sea cleanup. So they can choose to do that. I think what is important is, given the length of the license, be clarifying what will be required of them, right?
The boat launch was, the one thing that I know is boat launch was changed. The boat launch used to be up north where the park is, and they moved it down closer to where the dam is. There used to be a launch there, so that's one thing they have done. But I would be curious to know what sort of, you know, if there's any way to dig it up, it'd be interesting to know.
Kim, and then we'll look for a motion.
Scott, can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to make sure, Greg, if we use the recommended motion, can there still be some edits? Like, I don't know if you have the letter here for us to sign, but is it still
No.
possible to, okay. So if, I think we can just do the motion as is, but I think if there's, seems like consensus to change that violation to fallen short, and then I'm not sure if Ida wants to suggest a sentence maybe in an email later to say the impacts on Lyman Point Park or other areas. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that we can make this motion and still have a
Yes.
couple edits.
Yes.
So there's not another meeting between now and when this has to be submitted.
There is,
There is.
16th.
So why don't we wait till the 16th to submit it?
The problem then becomes, if you put it on an agenda item, you could spend another hour or two
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
Well, I just think,
We'll look for a
well, that'd be a
motion.
chance for all to
I'll make the
get together and sign it, that's all.
All right,
Okay, I move that the select board authorize the town manager to submit on its behalf the town of Hartford comments related to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for relicensing of the Wilder Dam.
good. Second,
A second?
Kim, discussion. Discussion. Okay,
Yeah, I don't disagree with the overreaching idea of this. I believe that some of the language does have to be changed. I'm not sure whether that would affect this this letter as written. So I don't know if there's a way we can do it as amended.
That's my expectation, that you're authorizing the town manager to sign a letter once these agreed changes are made. And if certainly you have something that you want to suggest, and maybe we can run it by for select board for the May. We can't have a discussion.
No, I understand. That's why I say, I mean, I don't know why this can't wait until for us to sign off on it next meeting. I mean, if, I'm not talking about having an agenda item, I'm talking about having, you have the paperwork together after you present the changes to us, and then we sign off on it. It doesn't
Well, it's the town
require,
manager that we're authorizing to sign it. But
we have
you all
a
seven wanna sign it?
motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?
nay.
Okay, so 6-1. All right, thanks, everybody. Very
Yes,
informative.
thanks.
We're past the point we usually take a break, so let's take 5 minutes. We'll come back. We got a couple quick items. Should be,
Matt, thank you.
we'll be out of here. So we'll see you.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, it's the Arbor Day
That's all.
All right, welcome back, everybody. From the break, we have a couple of proclamations to do. Normally when we do these, I read them, and then I think we move to adopt them.
And then
essentially.
there's signatures available for you.
So the
Yes.
first is Arbor Day proclamation. So whereas Vermonters have long recognized the contributions forests provided to ecological, social, and economic sustainability of the state. And whereas trees in our cities and towns increases property values, enhances economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas Vermonters are encouraged to become stewards of their own environment by managing forest land and planting and maintaining trees to improve the quality of life that we all enjoy. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board, and on behalf of the citizens of the town of Hartford, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2024 as Arbor Day in the town of Hartford. And we urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day, to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and to support our community forestry program. So that's the proclamation. I think we just make a motion to adopt it, essentially.
Comes in handy when we're looking for grants.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I can,
Oh, go ahead.
okay, so I move that we adopt the Arbor Day proclamation.
Second.
I will second.
Okay, we'll second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we have a longer one, but I'll get us through it. And this is the Parks and Rec Month designation. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Hartford, Vermont. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near the parks. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation is a leading provider of healthy meals, nutrition services, and education. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community, provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month. And whereas Hartford, Vermont recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Select Board that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the town of Hartford, Vermont. I'll take a motion on that one.
I'll make a motion.
All right, Mary.
Okay. I move that by the Select Board, that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the town of Hartford, Vermont.
Have a second.
Second.
Have a second from Sue. All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Great, yeah, thanks, Scott.
Did you write that too, Scott?
Well, it's all true.
Yeah.
Our next item is the continued discussion of select board liaisons. I think that's basically Mary put in an application to be on each court. And so I think we didn't vote on it because we were absent from the meeting. So if you want to tell us a little something about why you're interested in H. Corey, I think we can go ahead and make that motion.
Well, I guess the tenets, the beliefs, the goals of H. Corey have been a part of my life, and I didn't recognize it for much of the time. One thing that people don't know is that when I was just starting high school, our family took a young Olau Sioux Indian woman who had gotten a scholarship to a women's college in Omaha, but she couldn't afford to pay for room and board. She was basically, even though her mother was still on the reservation, she was raised in the Mission Orphanage there. Their father had left. And so she came and lived with us for 4 years. And it was an eye-opening experience for a young person because we all sometimes don't recognize how much culture plays a role in our lives. And so even though there were 3 girls in my family and Bev made 1 more, the way she responded to different experiences left some of us, like my parents, feeling like they were doing something wrong when they weren't. They just didn't understand how she had lived. And so it was, like I said, it was an eye-opening experience. And then, of course, many of you know that I adopted a daughter from China. And that was a unique experience as well. And so my life has been a journey. I'm now on Ideal Vermont, cohort that deals with racial issues. And I've learned so much in the past 1.5 years. I thought it was only going to be a 1-year program, but it's still ongoing and I'm still learning. So I think we can hopefully open our eyes. And I think I try to go into things with looking at other ways for myself to react, to think about things. And I think H4A will give me that opportunity.
Good, thanks. Any questions from me? I'll take a motion. Kim?
Chair, I move that the select board appoint Mary Erday to be as liaison to the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion.
Second.
I'll second that.
Second from Brandon. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Mary, for putting in the application. Okay, our other item, last
Can I ask
item.
a question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Are we fully resolved on the parks and rec?
We are. So Sue's got that.
Sue's gonna do it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to consider adopting the select board calendar cycle. Kim, you put together a nice memo for us. Anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, this is really just something we've talked about over the last year, just establishing a framework. For example, our town manager just celebrating, we're celebrating his 6 months here, and we haven't really started the process to do an evaluation. And that's something, so the goal is to start to just institutionalize some of the things that are particularly board-led and not staff-led that need to have a placeholder so that we can say like, oh, you know, coming up in June, we want to have a joint school board select board meeting. And that's, again, that's kind of board driven.
Yeah.
So this is really just a simple draft that I think could be modified, but can kind of live with the chair for the chair to say, all right, we need to start working on this, or who's organizing training for the board coming up, what kinds of things it's going to be. So it's really just a tickler file. I think there probably are better ways to format it, but I think if there is consensus that we should have a cycle of events that are board driven that can be institutionalized, I think it would benefit the organization. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Sue?
Was this in color? Yeah.
So it started out-
Different shades of gray here.
It started out, like
there we
basically it's
go.
been added to, so the very first draft I did just included like, one color was the select board trainings, another color was the town manager evaluations, and then the third color was to invite, and that other piece, so inviting committees and commissions, one committee or commission per month to just come themselves, so not just liaisons, but I would love to have just a sort of brief 10 or 15 minute exchange with the chairs of the planning commission, of the zoning board, the things that like any committee, you know, if we want to exclude anyone. So basically just slot one per month. So it started out with just those 3. And then we started adding things like the budget cycle. So I added another color. And then John very aptly said, well, we should have in there the requirements for the town meeting cycle. So we added those in another color. So again, I think the formatting here is really subject to improvement. and happy to entertain that with anyone, but just the general process, it could be a work in progress, I guess. And that's, so the colors were sort of like, training was in green, the town manager facilitation process was in orange, and then also doing these listening sessions. This is something we've talked about for many years. We've only managed to do 2 or so that I know in the 6 years that I've been on the board. And it's been proposed that we might try to do those in the other villages, like basically just have a session that's publicly warned at the Quechee Library and the West Hartford Library and the Wilder Library, and just invite the public to be able to have a more informal, there might be a topic, like it might be around parking, it might be around climate, it might be around, some of these things that we can have just a more back and forth exchange and not have to have, this formality is really necessary for us to do the business of the town, but to give the community more opportunities to just really have a bit more of dialogue. And then the joint school and select board, I think ultimately having 2 of those a year is also really would be ideal in my opinion. So this is sort of putting it out there saying like, okay, if we say we want to do this, then it's putting on us to say, now we need to plan and organize those. And I think the town manager evaluation is really the priority at the moment.
Questions? I'll take a motion. Kim added a recommended motion.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Just, it's sort of adjacent to this. I think this is, support of this, especially given your experience on the board and you kind of know everything that's involved. And so I appreciate you organizing out a plan like this. My question is just about the commission reports. I know it was sort of mentioned in passing that like what exactly our responsibility as liaisons are, whether or not we are supposed to make any type of statement or if it's all on the committees and commissions to make the reports to the board. I don't know if that's still like, yeah.
We're considering having the discussion about the rules of procedure in the
Okay.
meetings.
Okay.
Maybe that could be rolled into that discussion. That's the expectation.
Right.
I would also just like to add to that. So what has been the practice, and again, maybe that can evolve a little bit, but basically the practice has just been like liaisons are coming back and reporting to the board what's happened the last meeting. Like, I attended this meeting and the group is discussing this. What I'm thinking of in terms of like even, whether sister cities come before, like when we're saying as a board to the planning commission chair, what are your priorities? How do you see your commission's role, and like just let the select board know. And if the select board says, clearly our priorities are around, housing stock and economic development or things like that. And how are we basically commuting on the bigger picture things?
Yeah.
And again, 10 or 15 minutes is not going to solve everything, but I just feel like there is a bit of a disconnect. And that often people look at the select board and say like, what are you doing about zoning? We don't have a lot of, I read the minutes of the zoning commission, but I just feel like it would help to kind of add a little cohesiveness to the governing body and the standing committees.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the idea of getting boards before the select board committees before the select board is a good idea. I think it would have more value, in particular about the forward motion of the town, if we could have the major bodies, planning and zoning, together at the same time. Because while we do not control the zoning board or the planning board, we do appoint members to that board. So therefore, we do have control over some of the actions by way of the people that we elect to those, not elect, appoint to those committees. So I think it's very important for I don't want to say this. It's important for the forward motion of the town to come from the select board, which reports to the citizens of the town of Hartford. And then we in turn make that point known to our zoning and planning boards of how we want to see the town progress based on input that we get from our citizens. Because they really have the planning and zoning board currently have no direction whatsoever from the town. And we have that direct oversight of them. Therefore, we should have more impact and more understanding of what they're doing. And they should be following our plans for zoning and planning for the future.
Questions?
I only know that to the extent that either of them are sitting in a quasi-judicial function, we probably should not have our fingers on this.
I understand that. However, we do have the ability to somewhat guide the forward motion of the town. It's our, not only we have the responsibility, I should say, to guard the forward motion of the town. And in that regard, we have the authority to either appoint or not appoint someone who holds the philosophies of what the select board has for the path forward, and we can remove those people as well. So therefore, that as you said, they have judicial authority once they're in that office, but we have the authority to remove them if they're not following the path that the select board sets forward for the town of Hartford.
Take a motion on the calendar.
I will move, Mr. Chair, I'll move that the select board adopt the proposed annual select board calendar cycle for the remainder of calendar year 2024.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second the motion.
A second for Mary. Any discussion?
Do you want to adopt it, say, through town meeting day? That way it's good, not just for this calendar year, but through town meeting and the reorganization.
Yeah, I think there was a reason I took the calendar year, just because that's just how it. But yeah, let's say till a meeting in 2025 for the amendment, we accept.
I will accept.
Okay, motion from Brandon, second from Mary.
Right.
And with the flexibility, the ability to, have some flexibility, adapt, revise
Yeah, it's
as more,
not-
It's
yeah,
framework.
it's a framework, yep.
Adopted the framework. All right, though.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
I
Opposed? Okay, great. So that brings us to commission reports. Kim, you got any?
I do. Want to start down the animal?
I can start this at Laney together.
Yeah, I do, but the Historic Preservation Committee's minutes are online on the town website, so I don't feel the need to bring that before this board.
Sue, any commission reports?
Been into anything yet.
Okay, so
Tomorrow morning, I'm with the business revolving loan.
Okay.
fund, So
we'll hear next meeting. I
can't wait
suppose.
to talk.
Ida, do you have anything?
The Energy Commission did meet, I attended it, yeah, I don't think I have anything to add beyond what they summarized in their own notes, yeah.
Mary, do you have any?
Sure. The meeting last night with the Hartford Conservation Commission began with new nominations and elections to the commission. The new slate of officers include Katie Mann, Chair, Mike Harris, Vice Chair, and Chris Beetham, Treasurer. Expenditures for the upcoming year fall primarily with Green Up Day and Trails Day. Sky Claude's Family Forest Frolic events are continuing with March's meeting uncovering salamanders and grubs in the woods and more families engaged. Her next event is scheduled for April 13th from 10 a.m. until the children's attention wanes. Upcoming conservation events and attractions include, but there are others ongoing as well. But April 20th, Vernal Pool Day, April 27th, Invasive Plants Day. There's a forestry workshop on April 18th at Hanover's Howe Library, partnering with Hanover Conservation and others, and we agreed to, they invited us if we would like to partner, and we said yes. So they have two other meetings, one in May and one in June. The one in May is about deer browse, and the one in June is about invasive plants and biodiversity. May 4th is Green Up Day. May 18th is a bird walk with Ted Levin. You have to be ready to be up at 5:30 at meeting. The other events ongoing of environmental interest, like the salamander meander and the fact that a fourth kestrel box was established on Christian Street at the same time. A kestrel was flying overhead, but Ted said he didn't think he was, thinking about nesting. He thinks he was just traveling. There are many events planned for this month and in the near future for all to be involved.
Thank you, Mary. Brandon, do you have anything?
I do. I attended the first meeting for myself of the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Just really quick, we got into discussing emergency shelter, kind of the RV program, and kind of the viability of that. And then there was one member of the public present, and I was just, I was moved. It was very heartening that they came in with their idea, and I just feel like we as a governmental or quasi-governmental body did what a government should do. We heard their idea, we helped them with advice for how they might be able to accomplish it, and of course we advise them on how to be respectful of current regulations for health and safety. Their idea, for the record, was they have a little bit of farmland and they want to put some kind of temporary or even not so temporary shelters for people to come and work and growing vegetables there. So they just came to float that and ask how they might best be able to do that. We also talked about the Home Creators Expo, which is going to happen at the Hartford Area Career and Technology Center. Alas, I'm going to be out of town, or else I would love to attend this. Kind of a meetup of all the home builders in the area and other tradespeople. Maybe architects are going to be there. The town is going to use it to kind of create a bigger network in the industry that we could maybe tap for advice or reduce fee services, that kind of thing.
Good, thank you. Kim?
Yes, I'm gonna give an H4 update, and it reminded me on that calendar, we've currently got a H4 quarterly update because that's been the practice of the committee. You know, future meeting, we're gonna discuss dialing that back to being like one per year, like the other, so with regular updates. H4 met on March 20th, was joined by 2 members from the Special Needs Support Center who gave an overview of their Special Needs Information Program, or SNP, which is a program to help emergency responders identify and respond to vulnerable residents with special needs. The program uses information voluntarily provided by the families and is intended to aid police dispatchers and officers and EMS in their response to calls for assistance that may involve individuals with disabilities. This may include locating missing person, medical emergency, crisis situation, behavioral episode, or other interactions. The information program is an expansion of an existing database which identifies community members who have Alzheimer's disease and dementia. The committee also received updates on the community safety review process, the welcoming and engaging communities cohort, school districts gender inclusivity policy, the Anne Reynolds Memorial Award, the status of the Windsor County NAACP development, and the current and anticipated committee vacancies. For more details, please refer to the March 20th meeting.
Thank you, Ken. I don't have anything, so we'll go to the consent agenda. Take a motion.
Can I ask?
Sure, John.
Could we carve out, say, the minutes of February 20th, since only 4 of you are eligible to vote on those?
Oh, so just vote them separately.
Yes.
Vote them
I was thought
separate.
you were gonna postpone it again.
No.
Okay, so we'll do the consent agenda for the first 3 items, and then we'll vote separately on the 220 minutes. Kim?
Mr. Chair, I move that select board approve payroll ending March 30th, 2024, AP manifests of March 29th and April 4th, 2024, and the meeting minutes of March 19th and March 27th, 2024.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then we'll do the minutes where it's just Mary, Kim, Laney, and I will vote on this.
Mr. Chair, I move that select board approve meeting minutes of February 20th, 2024.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. And so we'll have
So we got 4.
4 in favor, 3 abstentions. Does that sound right?
I think that is correct. Okay, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved at 8:15.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Don't forget to sign in.
No,
Yeah.
thanks.
And you guys, since we're all here and it's John's 6th month